Hi, I'm Dave Kangiser, the Stormwater Program Lead for the City of Tumwater and the NPDES Permit Coordinator. We inspect catch basins as part of our NPDES permit compliance. We're required to inspect 50% of our catch basins annually. They're also our first line of defense for our stormwater system. They allow sediment to settle out of the system and also keep water from flooding our streets. In late 2021, we reorganized our operations and maintenance team, and we created a dedicated stormwater maintenance staff, which really helped us to develop this new program. That team wanted to create a more efficient way to inspect catch basins. They also wanted to create a more efficient way to store data for reporting purposes. We wanted to be able to track performance metrics to report to our management team and our elected officials. And we wanted to be able to easily train new staff as they came on board.
Hi, my name is Mark Tigan. I am the stormwater crew lead for the City of Tumwater. We're in charge of the whole storm system in general. We do all the inspections, cleanings, repairs, and sweeping of the streets, and generally try to keep the storm system clean. So when we started, our stormwater reporting process, it was quite a few years ago, and we were working with an old program, and we were working on laptops in the field with an air card. And the old program was very data heavy, so it was very slow and non-reactive, and a lot of times we weren't getting reception in the field. And it was really dragging down the flow of our inspection, cleaning, and repair processes. So when I took over as stormwater lead, I met with my crew, and they told me of their concerns with this whole program as well. And so I approached the water resources team and said, look, how can we do this better? And they were very receptive of it, because there's information that they need to recover from this whole process for their annual MS4 reporting. And it's also for our data as well.
Hi, my name is Georgiana Strobin, and I am the GIS analyst at the City of Tumwater in the Transportation and Engineering Department. So when I first got involved in the catch basin process, I actually got an email from Mark asking if we could create some kind of way for them to use field maps, use web GIS to streamline the inspection process. To the best of my knowledge, it was taking a longer time. They were using Lucidity, which is our asset management system. They were having connectivity issues in the field using that solution. So we were asked to try to come up with something better, and it ended up taking us a little longer than we had planned to actually get that idea to reality, but we started working on it. Field Maps and Survey 123 are similar. They're different. They're like cousins. So Survey 123 is definitely like a form-based application there can be a map component and a location component in there, but it's really just about getting the details, getting the attributes of things. Location is kind of a second aspect of that. And then Field Maps is a new thing. So when we first started creating Survey 123s, we weren't really exposed to Field Maps yet. It came out in, I want to say 2019. And it's like an updated version of Collector. So Field Maps is really cool though, because it allows you to not only map data, collect features, and interact with it, but you can also create custom forms for your data. So it has a better Survey 123 component. However, the forms are not as detailed as Survey 123. There is more of like a limited component there, but it's still a really cool tool. So if you don't want to link Survey 123 and Field Maps together, you can kind of get the best of both worlds in Field Maps. For the catch basin inspections, we are using a Field Maps form, and then we are also using a related table so they can collect different information in one application.
We handed it to the GIS team, and they had a working program within a month. And it was something we took out in the field and we test fired. We didn't know if it would work, to tell you the truth. But it worked great. There's a few bugs to work out, and we just kept having interactions and feedback with the whole crew, the water resources and the GIS, and it all just came together rather quickly. And then they added a dashboard feature along with our program, which has been great for everybody involved. So the dashboard is something that we can all look at from any monitor in the city, and our management can look at it. The water resources can look at it. I can look at it as a supervisor to map our progress, and our crews can also look at it to, lay out the work that they need to do for that day, that week, that month. So it keeps a running count of all the cleanings, repairs, inspections. It's all brought together on one dashboard, and everybody can get their information from that. So the crew will pull up in their truck and get out, pull the grate off the storm structure, inspect the inside, and what they're looking for is any deficiencies as far as cracks, missing mortar, excess material in the bottom, does it need to be cleaned? So they inspect the whole structure, not only just whether it needs to be cleaned, but whether it needs to be repaired. And then they document that on the iPad. And once they close the report, it will highlight on the screen on the map its need for cleaning or repairs. The old system that we had several pages to each inspection report that we would have to fill out to complete one report on one asset in the city. This new system, not only it's got a lot of features built into it, like GPS tracking. We just bring up the map and the neighborhood we're in, and it'll GPS us right to that asset. And then we touch that, say Catchbasin, it opens up a quick report. We can fill it out in 20 seconds and the report's done. So it will tell us, do we need to clean it? Does it need repair? And then it highlights those conditions. We're trying to send the cleanest water, either into the ground or back to the rivers as clean as possible. And if we don't clean and maintain these systems, we fail to do that. It's also part of the sweeping program too. If you look at it, because a lot of the sweeping program that we do gets a lot of those impurities, heavy metals and stuff up off the street before they actually end up to where we need to clean them out, or they go downstream. So it's kind of a complete system, It's not just cleaning the catch basin, it's jetting lines, it's repairing things, maintaining our ponds, the whole ecosystem.
Well, I smell an Oscar.
You're too
Grant
kind.
actually produced that video in-house. I think he did a great job.
Thank you.
It really
Yeah.
captures a lot of the essence of how this program kind of came to be. So we kind of wanted to round it out a little bit more with our, the presentation side of this and kind of how this this process works. Yeah, that's right there, right? So yeah, we were gonna talk a little bit more about some of these details. As far as the GIS pieces go, I'm not the GIS specialist. You saw Georgie there; she's a wizard when it comes to GIS, and we're so lucky to have her on our team. And if you have somebody like that in house, use them because they're, they love this kind of stuff. They're challenging in ways that it's part of their. A lot of what Georgie does, she trains us how to utilize our GIS with the work that we do. So it's important to use that resource. But we really wanted to kind of discuss a little bit more about where we started with this whole process and how we got to where we got at the end there. So where we started, the needs assessment. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the collaboration that went into this. I think that's a big piece of this too that often goes overlooked. The ArcGIS Field Maps piece. Talk a little bit more about the interactive map and that dashboard. And then things that we're looking for in the future to maybe use these types of applications for.
Do that. Where we started with this program actually is our city's grown quite a bit in the last several years. Oh, I'm sorry. So our city's been growing quite a bit. And so what we did was we had a collections crew. We decided to separate, make a dedicated storm crew. And that's where we came in. And a lot of our storm systems were neglected. We were working with Lucity, which was really a data heavy system. And it was really hard for the crews in the field. They weren't getting connectivity. And when they did, just processing the information, the inspection information was really slow. So I approached Dave and our team and said, how can we speed this up? And that's where they came up with GIS. And we started a streaming, value streaming, right?
Yeah. So and again, I'm not a lean specialist by any means, but there's a few techniques I've learned throughout my career about some of the lean processes. And one of them is through a value stream mapping process. I've been a part of some of these value stream mapping processes, and they can be very productive. And we wanted to kind of modify ours just a little bit, but Mark touched a little bit on this. 2021, we reorganized our crew. We caught up on some of the deferred maintenance. This crew got to work right away. And we had a dedicated staff. Code was kind of unique in some ways in that we created this special position for one of our crew members that they can't get trucks together. So we had one staff that was dedicated to doing these inspections, but he was still using the same old inspection process. And it took him all year to get 400. Yeah, so it was a process. So we got together with Mark and said, well, what do we need out of this process? We started brainstorming a little bit, and so we started coming up with some ideas of the future state or the end goal that we wanted. And so there's a list here: simplified inspection criteria. We wanted connectivity throughout the city. We're right on I-5, so we shouldn't have connection issues in Tumwater. But for some reason, Lucity was having a hard time interfacing with, I guess, some of the firewall issues we had with Lucity was not making our connections like they should have been. The interactive map was Mark's idea that I think was super helpful for our crews. And for me, I'm our NPDS coordinator, so it's important for me to be able to retrieve the data that I need for reporting purposes and whatnot. And it's also, there are great metrics to talk to about when it comes to the city council and our elected officials. But we also we didn't want to go out and buy something off the shelf and try to use. We have resources in-house, and ArcGIS Online was something we realized we were underutilizing. So they've got this suite of tools already embedded in that program. FieldMaps and Survey 123 are some of those tools that are already there for us. And then everybody's had a lot of turnover in their crews, and so we wanted something that was going to be fairly simple to train on. So those are some of the key pieces that we wanted to make sure we touched on. So that collaboration process I was talking about, well, how do you even do that? And we kept it super simple, and we took a whiteboard about that size. We took a couple of sticky notepads, and we just all of us started writing ideas on those sticky notes and slapping them up there. And what it did is it gave us a visual record of the current process or current state, and then based on that current state that we have, we could identify pieces in that process where we needed to make some decisions. Well, such as, what's our data management system going to be? Are we going to stay with Lucity? Are we just going to use the geodatabase that's associated with our field maps and GIS applications? Do we need new equipment? Do we use some iPads? Stuff like that kind of became apparent once you started laying all this whole process out. And then basically you come to the end here, it's a future state, and this is exactly what we wanted the process to look like in this future state. And it's just a chronological way of stepping through our inspection process to where do we get to our end goals, and we hit all of our metrics that we wanted to hit. So a lot of times this, everybody talks about collaboration and how it's such a good thing, but a lot of times it's hard to get everybody in the same room and check all the boxes that you need to check. So this is the way that we did it. We spent a couple hours in the room together, and I've been part of these processes that have taken a week. People are crying. I mean, it gets crazy. So so we wanted to keep it simple. I cried. So anyway, so this worked for us, and it was fairly simple, especially if you've got an organization where there's a lot of new faces, or maybe it's a big organization, you don't really know people that well. This is a good way just to kind of break the ice and say, this is a real simple exercise. Take your sticky notes. What do you want out of this process? And we start laying them up there on the whiteboard. It was great.
Can you explain the parking lot down the pond?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. The parking lot. So as you're working through this process, there's other things that come up in the discussion. For us, it was like, well, why do we want to limit this just to catch basins? What about the rest of our facilities? Because we're still working through our inspection processes and some archaic ways and some of our older facilities as well. And so, the parking lot is just ideas that come up through the process that might not be related to what you're currently trying to achieve. So that's important to capture those somehow. And so we created the parking lot to make sure that we got those ideas, and then we can circle back to those at another time. When we've got this other stuff dealt with and deal with the parking lot issues. So super important. We don't want to lose that thought process and that momentum for other related topics. So step 2, again, this is the GIS piece of the development, and this is where the collaboration continues on with your GIS team. They necessarily weren't part of the process for the value stream mapping, but once we kind of identified our needs through that value stream mapping process, that's when we pulled in our GIS team and said, this is some of our wants and needs. What's out there? How can we get this to fruition? The GIS world is pretty amazing. There's some tricks and tools and everything that are really handy for the work that we do, and a lot of us aren't specialized in that type of technology, but there are people that are, and so really lean on those people, and they'll help you make your work streamlined, faster, more efficient, because that's what those tools are designed for. So once we kind of got the field maps application in place, we wanted to implement it. So we went through back to our value stream mapping and looked at some of the resource allocations that we might need. Again, like the iPads, some of the training. Do we need more staff? Do we have all the tools that we need to go out there and do these inspections? So that was a piece that we needed to kind of walk through. And then we need to make sure everybody's trained on this. We wanted to keep it simple enough that everybody can get trained, but we still needed training on how we capture the data, what happens to that data after we capture it in field maps. We still wanted to have an interface with Lucity, which is our asset management system. So that was a little bit tricky in trying to figure out what happens to our data. So we actually wrote a script to kind of automate it a little bit more, but so we're still able to capture our data, but there was a little bit of us trying to understand the whole process. So that's part of the training as well. And then communication, just feedback, feedback's important for the GIS team. Feedback's important to me, or to just this constant communication between all the stakeholders involved. And then you get down to the strategic planning, laying this out. How are we going to accomplish all this? We basically started from zero. So where do we start? Who's going to do what? Some of those things that we work through. And then the inspection, clean out, repair. That's just the work that gets that we really wanted to get to as part of this. And then the gap analysis. So once we kind of got going, there's some things that also came up. It's like, well, okay, well, we've got some areas of construction that have some of our catch basins in them, but we can't inspect them because they're in construction areas. So what do we do with those? And so there's some things like that come up as part of a gap analysis that we want to address. So I think we figured out a kind of a workaround, an easy workaround, basically just saying, oh yeah, we've got them inspected, but they're under a different inspection program. They're under the construction inspection program. So so that's kind of how we address those.
Sure. So a few other things I'd like to talk about as well is, so during the construction process of this, when we touch an asset on our map, it brings up a, excuse me, a small inspection report, and we can identify that on there that it's still in construction. Then we can go back and turn it red, means it needs to be inspected. So once it's been added to our asset system, we can go back and do our first inspection. So, and yeah, so training the crew was fairly easy. This is all GPS related. I sat through a couple other seminars today, and everybody's moving towards a paperless system. This is a great one right here because the GPS is you right to the storm catch basin. You touch the screen, it brings up the report. Just by touching that asset, it'll bring up that report. It's 3 or 4 steps. We don't go like 1 through 10 or anything like that either. It needs to be cleaned or it doesn't, or it needs to be repaired or it doesn't, because either it does or it doesn't. And we didn't want to have to rate all that stuff. So this is how we found it to be. So that was a big step for us because our old system was 1 through 10 or whatever, and everybody had a different assessment of what it was. So that changed a lot. Part of our whole streamlined system was also we really need to know is does it need to be cleaned and repaired. So that really helped us out a lot. So yeah. Want to do the annual report?
Yeah, so some of our outcomes, I mean, with this whole process, I mean, we really checked all these boxes. Our NPS annual report, city council, other city departments. It's kind of been a source of pride for our crew that we're able to, kind of achieve all these goals that we had. Because basically this was a G20 for us for a while. So we weren't meeting permit compliance, and so now we are. So that's huge, especially when you can tell the mayor that you kind of overcome that. So, oops, wrong way. Let's go this way. So yeah, future applications. So, I mean, the catch basin inspection program is a fairly straightforward inspection program. Like Mark said, it needs to be cleaned. It doesn't need to be repaired. It doesn't. We're really thinking that this could be there's going to be a future for this in other facility inspections, source control inspections is another one we're using it. But there's a host of inspections that we're required to do now, and I think using field maps, using Survey 123, some of these GIS-based tools is the way to go. We're going to be transitioning from Lucity into a new Munis system, a Tyler Munis system, and it's all GIS-based as well. And so the thought process for us is that we can build out all of our surveys and GIS, ArcGIS tools that are readily available, and that's going to automatically integrate it with the new system pretty seamlessly, from what we're told. But it's there shouldn't be any too big of hiccups. The last presentation they were using Cartograph, which I thought was really clever. I don't know if anybody was here to see that one, but our hope is that it's going to be a very similar interface, but we're still going to use our ArcGIS tools and not have to go with a proprietary type of survey that is connected to that asset management system. So
Another bonus to this is that we can work offline at any time. So
yes,
like a lot of these programs, you have to be online. They're talking about, you need 5G to operate Cartograph and everything. This, we can download information in the morning and then just take it out in the field and work with it, and then come back at the end of the day and you just sync it up and it transfers all the data just seamlessly. So that was a big benefit we had.
yeah, for sure. So I've kind of heard everything under the sun's being used for these type of inspections. You know, paper, you know, other applications. I'm curious. I'm just kind of wanting to open up a little bit and just kind of have a discussion on what are people using. What are some barriers that you're seeing right now to what you'd like to be using? How's the process going? I know that. So just for reference, I mean, we have just how many catch basins?
4,000.
4,000 or so. How many have we done in the last 4 months? 3,800. So, I mean, we've really gotten efficient. So there's some efficiencies for sure, but I know that, you know, there's some folks out there that might be struggling with some of their, you know, whether it be collaboration, whether it be just, you know, GIS tools. So what's going on out there, and what are people using, and what's working and what's not?